Okay, so I'm going to start with a quote from one of our favorite people ever, William Lloyd Garrison. I have no idea. I just read his name in a book once. So this is sort of part of the idea of what we're doing. He said, "Let a national anti-slavery society be immediately organized, the object of which will be to quicken and consolidate the moral influence of the nation, so that Congress and the state legislatures may be burdened with petitions for the removal of the evil, to scatter tracts like raindrops over the land on the subject of slavery, to employ active and eloquent agents to plead the cause incessantly and form societies and da-da-da-da-da-da, blah, blah, blah." He goes on and on about all this stuff that we really should do to end slavery, and then they did most of those things. So petitioning state or otherwise governments is not a new thing. It's useful. It's not the point. It's not the main thing. It's very useful, though. So I guess what I would hope to do is briefly just explain how it can be helpful, what we can do, and what an abolitionist society that's established in here could do briefly. And then as people are getting to that stage, I will help. There are benefits to this sort of thing. Like, we abolitionists hold to 2 modes and 7 stages and 5 tenets and all that stuff, right? This is going to be agitation. That's what a petition like this, that's what an amendment of abolition is agitation. And there's more to it than that, but it's basically state-sponsored agitation, which is pretty cool. We write up a bill, an amendment probably of abolition, and it's this whole process, submitting it to the state, and then the language and the thing and and then you print a bunch and you go get signatures and you get it on the ballot. It's a lot of work. Cal Zastro can testify to that. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and it's worth it, especially for something like this. So I would say there are like 4 or 5 main reasons why this is a good thing for an abolitionist society, and a member of ICAS should do this sort of thing. The one is agitation, as I mentioned. Hundreds of thousands of people will be asked to sign a petition to end child sacrifice. That's a big deal. Not only that, hundreds of thousands of people will sign a petition to end child sacrifice. So that's a big deal. So we as abolitionists, we're not going to be approaching people and saying, "Hey, do you want to sign this petition to protect a baby in the womb?" Or, "Hey, do you want to, I have this thing that would define when life begins, or like a person is a human at all stages. Would you want to sign that?" We're actually going to be approaching people and saying things like, "Hey, will you sign this petition? We're trying to abolish abortion." That's a big deal. That's pretty cool. And not only that, we're not just going to go to like supermarkets. We're not just going to stand outside of Kroger and ask people. We're actually going to be approaching churches and pastors, and we're going to stand outside Christian concerts, and we're going to go to town squares and big festivals and parades and all these things, and actually call on people who are Christians to take one and say, "Hey, you're a Christian, live consistently, seek to abolish abortion." Not only just sign it, but take one. We're going to be calling up churches and saying, "Hey, can we come to your church and get some signatures for this thing?" And they'll say, "Oh, okay, well, we're pro-life. What is it?" "Oh, well, we're seeking for the abolition of abortion. We're actually Christians." And Russell and I talked about this on the phone a while back. It's not about like, "Oh, well, your church should be pro-life." It's actually like the darkness of the world being confronted by the church. That's what this is. This is one avenue of light confronting darkness. So, with that in mind, I will keep talking. Okay, so not only that, let's say in Oklahoma or Nebraska or Washington, let's say one of these things actually gets on the ballot. Then what happens is ballots are mailed to millions of people, as well as this little book that talks about what the stuff on those ballots are. And it says, hey, do you want to abolish abortion? Yes or no? This is state-sponsored agitation. This gives us the chance, not that we need an excuse, but this actually gives us a chance to approach people and ask these questions and evangelize and do what we do at a conference like this. That's just one more avenue. Beyond that, there is value in that it will help to reform politics. So as these things happen and as these things continue and become perhaps a little more successful and a little more normal, and as abolition grows, an abolition amendment will be something that people talk about and know what that is and know what abolitionism is and all this stuff. And so right now we have people like, I don't name someone, Rick Santorum or like Newt Gingrich, or these people who people will look at them and say, oh, they're great. You know, these people are great. They're saying like the right things. But people only think that because no one's actually saying the right things. No one is actually saying what needs to be said. These people are just saying somewhat pandering things in order to get the votes of Christians. It's gonna take that away from them. Like, it's not just signing a pledge to be 100% pro-life. It's not just this or that, or an ad campaign that talks about how many children he has and how he believes life is sacred. It's actually something that will reform the landscape of pro-life politics as this becomes a thing. There's great value in that. It's actually going to be holding people to a standard that's worthwhile, rather than pandering and allowing people to be dumb and compromising and using pro-life people for their own means. I also think one of the biggest things of this is recruitment for abolitionist societies and calling upon the church to be the church. With this, the hundreds of thousands of people that are going to be asked to sign and that will sign, and then we'll see it on ballots and this and this and this, abolitionist societies will grow through that. Your abolitionist society, you'll meet hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people. And most of those people who sign, you should ask them if they want a petition, because if they signed, maybe a certain percent will actually want one, and then it's possible that you might actually have an abolitionist on your hands. You can actually grow an abolitionist society, and that's not the main function, but that's helpful. And then calling upon the church, you can actually, I mean, like I was saying a moment ago, it's actually, instead of approaching churches and saying, hey, we have this pro-life law, can you help us pass it? We're actually saying, hey, as Christians, we believe that child sacrifice is wrong and it's normal in our culture and we want to end it. Can you help us do that? Will you do that within your church? It's just one more way to do that. So, and then that also, it's almost like the beginning of a church repent project. Like a church that says, no, we're not really into that, that's a good time to speak to that church and see where they're at, you know? Okay. So yes, think of the weight of asking people to sign a petition to abolish human abortion rather than any other pro-life petition that probably has ever been run. That's a big deal. So it's not super complicated. It differs state by state. It's not exciting, the process itself, getting it started, but it's something that established abolitionist societies should consider doing soon in the future. And obviously, as more and more abolitionist societies become established, it'll become more of a thing. So I would be more than happy to talk to people who, in fact, Keith Dalton, strangely enough, was talking to Russell as Russell was talking to me about doing something like this. So there are already people among you, a bunch of freaks, who are considering doing this. There's value to it. We'll get language. We'll do what we need. We'll get it done. So the one thing that is imperative about this is to count the cost before beginning. Don't just say, yeah, we want to do that. It's me and my cousin Lenny and my dog, and we're going to get 400,000 signatures in 4 months. It's something that the cost needs to be counted beforehand. Drop the mic. No, I don't. I know that's not exactly a theatrical ending, but that's sort of the idea. There's value to it. There's more value than what I said. That's just sort of the thoughts that popped into my head, and I'm trying to stay brief. So, Tim.
Would that be a state-run thing or a society? Because we are encouraging abolitionist studies to pop up in every single tiny village and city.
Right. It could be either. Like the Abolitionist Society of Omaha, for example, could sponsor a petition for the state of Nebraska.
So then all the abolitionist societies in Nebraska could join together to do that thing.
Indeed. So Omaha or Nebraska is a good example. Washington is a good example. There's Vancouver and Seattle and these states where there's abolitionists spread out. That would be a good place to start, because it would be a state amendment. But any abolitionist society of any city could start one and sponsor it and do it.
So if an abolitionist society said, yes, I want to do that,
yeah,
from that time to the time when it's actually happening and gathering signatures, how long would it take? What would it take and how long would it take?
Okay. Right. So let's say an abolitionist society wants to start this immediately. What it will take is language, drafting language, which could take... It depends. That depends. That's something we'll have to get people involved with, draft language, do the thing. After that, it will probably have some fairly standard language. Submit it to the Secretary of State and all this stuff in your state. Go back and forth. It takes several months to actually start. You have to put some planning into it. And there's certain times you can't do it and all this stuff. It's state by state as well, so that would differ.